Tanse. Good evening. I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. First Nations leaders from across Canada will meet virtually next week to discuss the Liberal government's proposed new legislation bill C-5. It aims to fast-track development projects deemed in the national interest. At a press conference in Ottawa on Wednesday morning, Assembly of First Nations leaders were busy fielding questions about what may be on the meeting's agenda. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Prime Minister Mark Carney wants C-5 passed by Parliament before the House of Commons rises for the summer. But APTN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak says things are moving too quickly, and First Nations need more time to evaluate how the legislation could affect their rights.
We've always stood forward and helped Canada, but at the same time, when there's bills being rammed through that could affect our rights, and we just got the bill on Friday, a draft, the draft bill. We need time, of course, to legally review it, politically review it as well, and we're not being given that time.
APTN Regional Chief for British Columbia, Terry Teegee, was also at the Ottawa presser on Wednesday. He says free, prior, and informed consent does not necessarily mean individual First Nations have veto power over specific development projects.
No government has a veto, meaning that when we come to a decision, all governments come into room to make a decision together. And I think, First Nations certainly, as a part of this, need to be part of the decision-making process.
Teegee says if all parties take the time to build consensus, it can be achieved. But at the same time, he says Canadian governments have historically used the term national interest as a way to bypass Indigenous rights altogether.
We're in the middle of a tariff war, and there's these external pressures upon Canada, British Columbia, and what have you, where there's a big push for many of these projects. However, far too often we've seen this in British Columbia, we've seen it in Canada as well, is that it's at the expense of our rights, title, and interest.
Woodhouse adds the appropriate time for governments to consult with First Nations is while legislation is being drafted, not after it has passed into law.
They want to push through this legislation right to the end of this month, and I think that's the wrong way to go. And even though they have committed to meet with First Nations leadership, they've committed to that for this summer. The Prime Minister himself will meet with chiefs. I think you need to do that before you pass any legislation so that they can have input.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Shortly before the AFN's press conference today, the NDP also held one this morning on Parliament Hill. 3 NDP MPs, including Nunavut MP Laurie Idlout, held the presser. It was in response to Prime Minister Mark Carney's announcement on Monday to boost defense spending. Part of his $9 billion plan includes paying more attention to the north, like developing new drones and sensors to monitor the Arctic. However, Idlout says Inuit and Arctic communities must be included in defense decisions, and they must consist of investments in northern communities. Idlout suggests new spending so the Arctic search and rescue base can be moved from Halifax to a community in Nunavut.
Ensuring that search and rescue teams can properly function within Nunavut. We need to see more investments in airports, in bases being created in Sanagayak, airports being paved in places like Cambridge Bay as a regional hub. These kinds of investments, these kinds of enhancements could include making sure that reliable air transportation can happen so that it can be affordable, so that Nunavut can be engaged in Arctic sovereignty and Arctic security.
As wildfires continue to burn across Saskatchewan, some fires have now been contained thanks to the firefighters' efforts. But as some communities prepare to return home, the province promises more support for recovery and rebuilding. APTN video journalist Rachel May attended a press conference with Premier Scott Moe this morning and brings us this report.
Our provincial emergency was declared 14 days ago. It seems like a lifetime for many. Many that have been displaced from their community for a number of days or a week or two.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe spoke to media in Saskatoon Wednesday about the ongoing wildfire fight in the north. Favorable weather helped with the containment of some fires, and communities like L'Orange are preparing to return home soon. Mo says going comes with challenges, and the province will provide relief to residents 18 and older.
All residents, evacuated residents of an evacuated community will receive a $500 financial assistance emergency investment in their family. These funds are going to help support families not only through their evacuated time, but going to help support them as they encounter the costs of returning to their home community.
When APTN asked Premier Mo about future plans to prevent or contain man-made wildfires, he admitted there have been shortfalls, but said the government will invest in community supports to improve its wildfire response.
I think what you're seeing here today is there's additional supports that the government realizes need to be made available, and we need to have a look at what those supports look like and what that policy looks like moving forward.
He also mentioned plans to strengthen the province's Fire Smart program, which teaches people how to prevent wildfires and prepare their home for wildfire season. Also speaking Wednesday, Saskatchewan Ombudsman Sharon Pratchler said the province hasn't done enough to address the ongoing trauma evacuees are facing.
Remember that trauma doesn't end because you're back in your home. Because what happens then, and there are probably people experiencing it already, is your sleep patterns get disrupted. You might start having nightmares about what happened. You may not feel safe.
Pratchler said that despite the Premier's assurances, her office will go ahead with an investigation into how the province helped the evacuees or didn't. She says she wants Northern residents to know they're not alone and their voices are being heard. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The Dryden Creek wildfire burning just outside of Squamish, BC this week is still out of control and has now grown in size despite efforts to contain it. A local state of emergency has also been called for the area. APTN's Tina House has that story.
Here in downtown Squamish, people are just going about their day and running errands or headed to work. But just above, along this ridgeline, is the Dryden Creek wildfire. It was first reported on Monday afternoon and was only half a hectare. It grew to 5 hectares overnight, and now officials are stating the out-of-control wildfire has grown to 20 hectares in just 3 days. Officials believe it was human-caused. Numerous helicopters are scooping water from the nearby Squamish River in Brackendale to fly over 3 kilometers to drop on the fire that's burning alongside the Sea to Sky Highway on this steep mountainside. Houses, power lines, and a cell tower is very close to the fire.
It's being driven mostly by a west-facing steep slope. This is going to be the huge challenge for our crews on this fire. There's going to be places that are inaccessible to work, which is going to make this a drawn-out event.
Wilson Williams of the Squamish Nation joined us by Zoom and says Mother Nature might just be on their side at the moment.
You know, a little bit of relief because the winds are blowing away from the homes and residences, especially away from the reserve lands and our villages. But there's an evacuation alert for 100 plus homes right now that are up in the mountain area where the fire is.
And Larry and Vera Douglas are some of those that have received the alert. They've lived here in this house they built since the early 1980s and says it would be devastating to lose their home and neighborhood if the fire somehow changes direction.
And this home style was the very first home style that was built within the Squamish Nation territories, all territories.
And this is my wife's TV room. We each got our own separate TV rooms because I'm not into
her
shows and she's not into my war shows that I like to watch.
They raised their family here and say they are just not ready to leave it.
I'll grab all our family photos, right, and our important papers, of course, right, and some clothes, right.
Try to take what we could, and wouldn't be very much. Of course, I'd like to get the vehicles out of here, the Harleys, of course, and the Hummer and Vera's car on the side.
The Jeep.
And as much personal things that we can gather, you know, like family mementos and things like that. In my heart, I want to stick it out. You know, I don't want to leave. I don't have that even in my mind to leave. stay right here.
But if the current evacuation alert becomes an evacuation order, the Douglas family would have to leave as soon as possible. Larry has a message for those that are in the outdoors to take extra precaution because of the extremely dry conditions.
Whether it's after team sports, barbecues, family barbecues, garbage burning fires, yard waste fires, any kind of fires. Don't do those things. Don't do those activities. Think of the larger community. Don't just think of your own selfish satisfaction.
There are currently 93 fires burning across BC. Tina House, APTN National News, Squamish.
A former Regina police officer in Saskatchewan has been accused of using a police database to contact and speak with vulnerable women. We'll speak with the Globe and Mail reporter who has been looking into that story when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our next guest is Janet G. Pruden, an award-winning Globe and Mail journalist. She recently did a story about a Regina police officer in Saskatchewan who has been accused of using the Regina Police database to text and converse with numerous vulnerable women and pursue intimate relationships with those women, some of them Indigenous. After a 2023 complaint, Sergeant Robert Semenchuk was suspended with pay, and the Crown laid 2 criminal charges against him, including breach of trust and unauthorized use of a computer. Semenchuk has pleaded not guilty, and a court date has yet to be set. We spoke to Jana Pruden from Toronto to find out more. Jana Pruden, thank you so much for speaking with us. Your latest story you did in the Globe and Mail is about a former officer with the Regina Police Service. Can you tell us what you found through your investigation about this officer?
Yeah, this officer, Robert or Bob Semenchuk, is currently accused of breach of trust. And those charges relate to at least 24 women, although a source has told me that it's 30 women, who he's accused of, in some cases, I guess, finding them through computer systems after they had interactions with the Regina Police Service, say for domestic violence, or one when the police were called because she was suicidal. And in other cases, they were women who had no contact with the police whatsoever, but Sergeant Semenchuk would contact them with what appeared to be a wrong number on a cell phone and start a conversation, start a personal, intimate relationship. And none of the women knew he was a police officer. They knew him under false identities. Some knew him as Jay Lewis, some knew him as Steve Perkins, and as a contractor or in construction or in finance, not a police officer at all.
Quite a considerable amount of women. Are you able to say how long he did this for?
Yeah, so the breach of trust and misuse of a computer database charges before the courts, the longest back allegation dates back to 2011, and they go essentially to the time that his phone was seized after a woman came forward to professional standards and made a complaint against him, and that's in the spring of 2023. That's the woman Kay.
Jana, you mentioned in your story some of the victims were Indigenous. What has been the general reaction from them regarding all of this?
Yeah, the first woman who came forward, and she's an extremely courageous woman, I think, to take on the police. And, you know, being an Indigenous woman in Regina, she never would have dated a police officer. So obviously has been a traditionally pretty difficult relationship and distrustful relationship. So she never would have gotten involved with a police officer. She came forward because she knew that this was wrong. And it was really her investigation. She started to get a little bit suspicious. They had a relationship on and off for 5 years. And she started to get suspicious. She put his picture into a very advanced reverse image search, was able to identify him, and then since then they've identified at least 23 other women, and we believe more. So the reaction has been very powerful, and I think very, very important. You know, I've heard from a former police officer from the Regina Police Service who has hinted that, you know, this is a much bigger problem. Many of us may consider that it's even goes beyond this man and this woman. And I'm hearing from a lot of women who are really, really concerned about this. As you say, some of the victims are Indigenous women. They're very, very disturbed to have found out that they were essentially being preyed on by a police officer.
And Jana, can you talk about some of Semenchuk's career? I understand he won many awards for his years of service.
Yeah, you know, we don't know too much about his career. The police haven't told us much, except that he was involved in undercover operations, investigative units that used plain clothes. He did win the Governor General's medal for meritorious service. And, you know, that's one of the things when Kay, this main woman who came forward, the first woman who came forward, that's one of the things she said to me is like, you know, who was I? I'm this Indigenous woman in Regina, and here he is. He's this award-winning police sergeant. And that was part of, I think, what makes it the power imbalance so large and made it so intimidating to go up against him.
We have about 30 seconds left, Jana. Finally, what's next for Semenchuk, and is he in custody, and does he have a future trial date set?
He's not in custody. He was not even in custody for a full day. He was released on bail. He resigned from the police service the day before his first court appearance. He actually has a court appearance tomorrow on Wednesday, and no trial date has been set so far.
Jana Pruden, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your exceptional work on this story, and thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much, Creason.
Next up, we'll speak with an Indigenous business leader who turned her coffee dreams into a reality. We're back in less than 3 minutes. Stick around. Thanks for staying with us. It's that time again for Photo of the Day. This is the world's largest tomahawk, and it's located in Cut Knife, Saskatchewan, located just 4 hours northeast of the world's tallest teepee in Medicine Hat, Alberta. Thanks for sharing, Dorothy. As a longtime Treaty 4 and Saskatchewan resident, I admit I have seen the big teepee many times, but I have yet to go see this tomahawk. Definitely going to put that on the bucket list. Send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Here now is tomorrow's weather forecast. On the east, Charlottetown 22 in rain, Halifax 25 in showers. Anujoak 6 in showers, Kuujjuaq 4 in showers. Saguenay 16 in rain, Quebec City showers there in 20. 26 in Windsor and partly cloudy, London 23 and rain. Sioux Lookout 17, Thunder Bay 15. Puckatawagan 15, Thompson 14. Barons River 20, Gimli 24. 25 in Regina, North Battleford 24. 23 in Meadow Lake, La Ronge, partly cloudy and 18. 17 in Grand Prairie and rain, Smoky and Peace River at 21. Rain in Calgary at 18, Lethbridge 23 and showers. Rain in Campbell River at 15, Vancouver, rain there 19. Fort Nelson, Smoky and 21, Smithers 13 and rain. 18 in Whitehorse, Dawson, sunny and 24. Fort Simpson, sun there, 24, Trout Lake, 25 and sun. Paulatuck, 8 and rain, Colville Lake, sunny there at 17. 14 in Whale Cove, Chesterfield, 14. And Resolute, 0, Iqaluit, 8. A new Indigenous-owned cafe called Grey Wolf is brewing up some strong coffee and strong community connections in a small town in Manitoba. As APTN Sierra Bettens tells us, the owner, Tanya Clark, made her dream a reality and explains the story behind the cafe's name.
When Tanya Clark remembers her late father, George Buddy Clark, he's sitting with his grandkids with a hot beverage in his hands.
He would always come and sit and have his tea, and I say tea because he would tell everyone that it was tea, but it was actually coffee with sugar.
A residential school survivor, George never had the opportunity to attend ceremony or receive his spirit name.
Our names are how we identify and how we transition into the spirit world. So once he did pass, we held a ceremony for him, and that's where we found out, his name is Grey Wolf Man.
Today, his daughter is honoring his legacy by launching the Grey Wolf Cafe in Dugald, Manitoba. Since its grand opening this weekend, the cafe has been the talk of the town, located just outside Winnipeg.
We had a lineup throughout the door all day long until we locked the door at 4.
The menu offers locally roasted coffee, sweet treats baked by Clark's mother-in-law, and fresh Bannock breakfast sandwiches.
We had Dana Constant come in, who's a Red Seal chef from York Factory First Nation, and she put the entire kitchen together. She trained all the staff, and we perfected together a Bannock that would be soft enough for the breakfast sandwiches.
The cafe also features personal touches, like this set of chairs Clark inherited from her father.
When we decided just under a year ago that we were going to do this, we found Destiny Seymour's prints and recovered the chairs, and we always had the vision to have them in front of a nice, beautiful fireplace.
Eager to make full use of the space, Clark is already planning a calendar of events for the summer.
But we'll also have community events like seniors afternoons, paint nights. Jackie Travers has agreed to come in and host a paint night in August.
For her, the cafe is more than a morning stop for a caffeine fix. It's a place for community to gather, heal, and share stories, including the one behind Grey Wolf.
My grandmother went to residential school. My dad went to residential school. I didn't grow up in community, didn't speak the language. My kids don't speak the language, but my grandson was the first one to start dancing powwow and learning our language. So in my short lifespan, you see really wonderful things happening.
For hours of operation, visit greywolfcafe.com or check out the cafe's Facebook page. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Looks like a great place to have a cup of joe. Thanks so much, Sierra. And that's your evening newscast for this Wednesday, June 11th. We're back again for your daytime newscast tomorrow. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, Masicho, Miigwech, Hai Hai, Kwana. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.